Well, Jerald, welcome to the Claima Stories podcast, powered by Vista. Thank you for coming from Cincinnati, coming into Portland, taking time out of the busy schedule. How you doing, man?
I'm feeling good, man. I'm feeling really good, really grateful.
Yeah. How's the time in Portland? I know it's a little cold, a little rainy, but you've been walking around. You've been chatting with the people.
Portland's cute, man. I mean, it feels like, it reminds me of Atlanta, how it's just sitting in a forest or sitting, built in there. And it's a quite young city. Because it had to be the late 1800s or something when things set out. So it feels really good. I'm excited to explore tomorrow.
You chilling? Yeah. Random question.
Tell me.
What'd you eat today?
So I had the avocado toast with the with the I know, right? With the scrambled eggs on top, real quick. That's all I really had, and I really had most of the avocado and the egg, and I left most of the bread.
Was that all right?
Yeah.
Did you meet the chicken?
Nah, I need to, and it was cool. I really figured out that I really need to start. I gotta figure out ways to cook, so I could probably, because it was a little bit of this that I wouldn't have done, a little bit of that, but
it was I wouldn't have done all that.
Yeah, I feel good about it.
Now I know you're back in Cincinnati now, right? And that's where you're from.
That's where I'm from.
Home, Nicky Giovanni, Isley Brothers.
Talk about it.
You know. What do you remember about growing up there, and was there a presence of those creatives also there in the city, and did you connect to that at that time when you were growing up?
It's crazy. When I think about Cincinnati, I always throw my father just comes into my mind. My dad was born in 1937.
Wow.
In Cincinnati, in the west end of Cincinnati, which by 1917 was considered like one of the worst slums to live in, and so my dad showed me around a lot, almost like I was a tourist. And so I remember him, and what he would show me. He would always take the back streets. It was crazy because he was born before the West End got split up by this major highway, which is I-75, which is one of the more used highways in the United States. So he would never take the highway. He was just he was always on the back streets.
Huh.
And so I got to learn the city.
You really got to learn the city.
Way.
He was like, nah, we're going to go through the city. I'm not in no rush.
Yeah, so the back streets of Cincinnati is what I think about when I roll around with my dad, is what I think about when I think about Cincinnati. Yeah.
What do you recall seeing on those back streets?
Man, so it's crazy. I grew up I'm an 80s baby.
Yeah.
So the 70s was right there.
Yeah.
Right? The 70s was like a decade
right
before.
Yeah.
So I remember the 70s. Right? I remember the colors of the 70s, those browns, the leather, the faux leather, a lot of fading, a lot of faded glory energy of that. You know what I mean? They used to be popular. I could tell.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Cincinnati is a very industrious town. And where the black folks live is very industrious. And so I have fond memories of that. Fond memories of beer, the smell of beer being made, because it has a rich history in beer. So a lot of smells and a lot of things that I used to touch, because I used to walk by. I'm one of them kids who used to walk by.
Oh, you was one of them kids touching everything, putting your nose in the flowers,
all that.
He's exploring.
Yeah, so it's crazy because I haven't been living at home. I jetted just like all the other kids.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so being back home right now really is nostalgic within itself.
What brought you back?
The pandemic, I was actually just coming back to chill out.
Yeah.
I had just moved out of my space. And in October of 19, I moved out of a house in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And I was going back between Los Angeles and London. And I kind of hung out in Atlanta with my brother, hung out in Cincinnati. January, I took a trip to LA to look for a spot, and as I was coming, dabbling for a couple of months, trying to figure out where I was going. Pandemic hit early March of 2020, and on March 6th, 2 of my cousins got murdered in Cincinnati on the same day in separate shootings.
Wow.
Which is just some wild hood phenomenon, you know what I mean? And I was like, yo, I'm needed at the crib. And I'm 39 now, so I've been last 13 years, I'm in the streets in London, New York, and LA. So luckily, I feel like I could get it popping from here.
Right.
I didn't know what I was gonna do.
Yeah.
But March 6th is just stuck in my mind as like this moment where I was like, nah, I need to be at the crib. It's kind of wild to see all of the great people. A lot of them, my friends, would be like, yeah, we for the community, but I'm like, bro, you don't live at the crib, you don't be at the crib.
You don't be there.
And although I think it's really great for people from towns to see, like, yo, that's bruh cousin, he doing it big at Nike, he doing it big at places. I want to be able to be at home. I want to be able to be in Cincinnati.
I think it's important, and it was interesting. Like a friend of mine, she checked me on that. It was because I've been gone from home 10 years in July, and I left to pursue my passion. At the time, I was working in the sneaker industry, so I left to go to Boston to do that. And she was like, obviously I'm happy for you and what you're doing, but you got a lot of information now, and we don't have none of that information. And it made it back. And it was like the first time I actually stopped and realized, I was like, oh, I hadn't sent none of this information back. And so when you talk about, being back home, I'm like, yeah. And so for me, it was like, that's partially why we're sitting here having this interview now. Is like, I was like, okay, well, I'm not in a place where I want to move back physically, but how can I share information back, right? Because I do feel like that's my duty, and I do feel like that's my way of service, because they're kids that I grew up with, people, my peers, they looking, and they're like, bro, give me something more than just, some pictures.
And it's getting bad, man. It's getting bad in these cities. I mean, it's been bad, but some of the statistics are just daunting for Black males, Black families, Black women, both giving birth and just living without males. What are we on, like our second or third generation without men in the house? That's the new nucleus of a family, and that's terrifying.
Yeah.
And so, but being home is difficult, right? Like, the industry that I'm in is not there. Whether it be creative, research, or any other verticals that I dabble in, it's just not there. So sometimes it's frustrating.
Yeah. Because you can't get access to information maybe as easily as you would when you were in London.
Or it just don't exist.
Or doesn't
exist. I shot Glorilla, and I'm not a photographer. So sometimes people ask me to shoot though, because they like what I'm seeing. And so I wanted to go shoot them. I'm like, yo, I need a photography assistant. Like, I need somebody to really walk me through this. And a lot of the brothers and sisters who shoot in Cincinnati, in small towns, they don't know necessarily about the industry of photography. They think they understand photography as a creative pursuit.
Right.
And in my Cincinnati, you got Procter and Gamble. Yep. You have Scripps Howard, who created the Food Network. You have places where you could actually be a photography assistant. The movie industry is big, or work within these production realms. And a lot of us don't know about those realms. There's not a Black-owned studio in the city, so on and so forth.
Yep.
And so I thought being there would be once the pandemic kept going, and then I turned back around and I did a lot of go within spiritual work. I was like, I'm gonna post up here.
Yeah.
Post up in the Natty and see if I can direct it from here.
Direct and help.
And so far so good.
No, I think it's dope, man. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the family side of things, right? So your mom, worked for the city transportation agency as an administrator, right, in the handicap division. And then your dad, he worked at the state mental health institution as an activities director, right? What's interesting about that is both of them worked in areas of accessibility for people with barriers. And I'm curious how that theme started to resonate with you, and do you recognize you kind of picked up on that?
It's funny because I just pick up on shit. I don't know things before, through asking these questions, I'll pick up so even with them two. Yeah. They didn't really kind of make that
connection.
It would be dope if I came over here my parents been down. But it seemed like to me they were doing what they needed to do to get stability in their lives. And so remember back in the day, working for the state or the city was one of the most
ways
stable places, right?
And have a job for years, have a pension or retirement, all that stuff.
100%. So I feel like that's the way they both did it, as I would question them about it when I started to put it together. But when I did put it together, and I was basically I had lost my hearing when I was, we don't know when I lost it, but we had found out when I was from between 3 to like 9. I basically had to get my hearing in my left ear back.
Wow.
And so I had to go speech therapy. I had a tutor all the way through undergrad school. And I feel like, so that was one thing that I noticed. Like my mom was very well, I don't want to say well versed, but she understood that like there's some people who are learning different and special.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I remember my mom always, it not being foreign to her that she needed to, get with me on that. But also this other thing about being around people with mental handicap or these handicaps or different ways that they learn is how you're able to I don't know, like the way I one-to-one with people is different because when you one-to-one with somebody with severe autism, when you one-to-one, like we were going, basically my dad was the guy at the hospital that would plan the activities. So anywhere from kickball to going to see a Cincinnati Reds baseball game.
Oh, that's dope.
So me and my brother, shouts out to Jamie, me and his first baseball games or football games were with people from the mental health hospital.
Yeah.
So we in that one van, like,
yeah,
and we just, it was so much fun. We were kids, and sometimes in some of these diseases, you see that kid get trapped into an adult's body, and so a lot of the times it's really fun. But I don't know, I feel like it made me a more well-rounded human being because of their professions and what they did once I was able to realize it,
Right. How do you think that carries on today?
I feel like I consider, like people call me an artist, a creator. They don't know I'm a mirror. I'm just a mirror.
Yeah.
I just care more about people
than
all of this other stuff.
things.
Any industry, any trend. I think people are very, very, very interesting. And so I really feel like they're people caring for what they did for a living. They were always considering people who maybe couldn't do the access. My mom's like public health, the public transportation for handicapped folks was one of the first in the nation here over in Cincinnati.
Okay.
I'm just like, but it was in like the late 80s, 90s. I'm like, so you telling me people with mental health issues or whatever that couldn't really get on that bus or couldn't get it, had to figure out
or probably couldn't get on.
Or they had to get rides.
Yeah.
And so that learning about that in the 90s it really stuck with me. So I really feel like it's made me more of a people's person. I can instantly, like I meet you and I can read you and I can instantly be like, all right, this person answers slow. I'm gonna give them space. This person, like, I don't know, it just made me better with people.
Yeah. Now, pivoting a little bit, but we were studying a little bit in your sophomore year in college, right? That's when you first encountered or was introduced to Afrocentricity, right?
Yeah.
And that was coined
Molefi Asante. Yep.
And how did that expose you to sort of purpose, kind of within your own life? Like,
bro, that was it. Because I'm a football, basketball, sports kid. Grow up. My brother was an All-American basketball, football player. I'm 18 months younger.
Yeah.
That was our life.
That was the lens you were looking through.
Yeah, sports, travel, sports, basketball, football, all that. And getting out of high school, knowing that I didn't have the grades and maybe even the ability to go D1 with my bro and doing all of that, I was, early forms of depression, I think.
Yeah, because you had probably associated your way out, who you are, your whole identity around sport.
So freshman year, about to get kicked out because of grades. Go to this small school in Cincinnati. They actually had a special learning program, so I went there, but still was just like, wasn't going to class, wasn't doing nothing. Communications, I knew like was my space. It was broad enough.
Yeah.
Communication studies was broad enough, so I'm like, I'm going there. And then in first class, they like everybody pick out of their names of the hats who they want to focus on for the next couple of years. I said, what?
Couple of years.
I said, couple of years. I said, all right, cool. I better be some cold names in here. I picked St. Augustine. And I was hot, bro. I was like, and this is before, this ain't nothing. Yeah. Wasn't nobody doing none of the, no lives matter and nothing like this is early 2000s, and it was like, I just kind of went, so what else could we do? And then she put me to the side, like, you could research somebody and So here I am hearing Common and Kweli. Afrocentricity.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's hot.
yeah,
I used to
what that
write
mean?
it down.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was. I just used to write Afrocentricity. And then it got so cold that I ended up sophomore year, she was like, yo, you can do Molefi Asante and his term of Afrocentricity for your thesis or whatever. And that's when I was like, it's on.
It's on.
And this is like, my mom and dad, like, they didn't go to college. My mom went 1 year and dropped out. Like, I didn't have like the big intellectual black family that knows about this stuff.
To like, explore that stuff. Right?
Nah, so that was like when I had got on the Afrocentricity, I was like, all right, it's cooked. Like, I'm about to do that. I ended up having a great phone call so it's crazy. I had 2 phone calls with Molefi Asante, never on the phone. So I called him, always on voicemails because we kept missing each other.
Wait, that's hilarious. So y'all would trade messages through voicemail?
So the first time I sent the voicemail, I made sure that I put everything there.
Of course.
And he replied, it's so crazy, da-da-da-da. And then he started talking about it. And he was like, yeah, but just call me. So then when I called him back, I missed him. But then he left this is when your voicemail became digital the first time. So you basically
so you can see it and you can read it.
Bro, he sends me this whole a 20-minute long voicemail. On my college dorm voicemail joint when I got there, and I sent him a whole 20, and then we emailed back and forth.
Wow.
And yeah, man, and think about a culture or a movement being centered around Africa as a continent, also the beginning of man. I was like, yo, that sounds foolproof. I feel like everybody should be on that. Why we on that? Why we ain't on that? And I, it was early, right? So I remember it. I did this whole thesis, and the thesis is actually kind of crazy because it was around how we communicate, and it's crazy that that's become a lot of what I'm working through now, language.
Oh yeah, so I was going to ask you about that. I was like, when you say communicate, you mean language and how we communicate maybe differently, and sometimes how that's not
it's like,
accepted or recognized.
Yeah. It's done. Yeah. It's like, bro, we can't keep moving and thinking that we got to throw ourselves away every time we step into a door.
We got to switch to somebody else's language.
And then they start pulling it out of us because they're using it. So here we go as somebody else, but they like, yo, we need you as you because we actually
so we can sell it back to you.
Man, me and you was talking last night about just the influence that and we did make this connection with the influence that hip-hop culture has now, which throw the music away if you don't like it, you know what I mean? Just think about the overall arching influence that it has right now. Yeah. It's a pocket. But then when you think about the influence that the continent had, and had in the seminal and the Romanesque movements and the Art Nouveau movement. And if you look at Art Nouveau as an art thing, and you look at some of these spirals and stuff, and then you look at black women during that same time in the West African countries where those people came from, it's just dumb easy to see the influence.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna be mad they try to cover it up. I'm not, because that's a lot of emotion.
Yeah, that's a lot to carry around.
That's a lot of energy.
A lot of energy.
And that's a lot of things that a lot of people are using to start the conversation is anger. And we all know healing, you gotta put that some place so you can have a one-to-one. And then knowing that the world concentrics mathematics and all these things, knowing that we're on a Georgian calendar and not the big calendar that everybody thinks it is. Like, this is a Roman Catholic calendar, bruh. And it's okay. It's not theory or it's not. It's just okay that if you know it and decide, hey, that's not my Christmas. I'm gonna celebrate this, or this is not my New Year. But the Afrocentricity and Molefi Asante really, really gave me my first purpose.
Now tell me how you get grounded in that, you get soaked up in that, and it's beautiful, right? And you write this beautiful thesis. So how you go from that into a sneaker business?
Yo. So here I am sitting in African American. Like I went to let's take a step back because I got to shout out Montessori schooling.
Yeah. Right. So you went to Montessori schooling, right? And it's way more hands-on.
So I went to Montessori from kindergarten to 8th grade. Wow. And they had just started a high school, first public high school. So Cincinnati has the Montessori, like all the Montessori people, I don't know what happened in the 60s, they came to the Natty.
Yeah.
And went to Xavier University. Mm-hmm. And that's where the Montessori program for the United States is, at Xavier University. I'm just finding this out too. And so they actually started public school Montessori. It was free. Because Montessori...
Public Montessori.
Yeah, like Montessori is usually like, it's taxing you. It's private. It tax you a lot.
Yeah.
So in Cincinnati, they just started a public one. So public school kids, black kids, blah, blah, blah. So, my mom hood. She'll tell you. Her and her sisters, they from the hood. So she was like, yo, we was just standing out there like, it sound nice, like it sound different.
It sound different.
It sound like a different way of learning. But B, Montessori is what superpowered me. I learned different, right? This is funny, but we can call our teachers by their first name.
You can.
And what that did with adult is what I think everybody trying to do now with kids and adult, where it's like, let the kid have an opinion.
Right. Because you create a space. You create so much of a space where it makes it feel like an adult's not approachable to have a conversation with, right? It feels more like a authoritarian figure that you can't.
B, you can understand if it's me, you, and my teacher Brent. I remember him. If I'm talking to you, I'm like, Brent, chime in on this. I'm gonna be like, bro, you talking to your teacher like that? Like, they did peer mediations. So you couldn't talk to the teacher when you had beef with somebody at the class. You had to talk with another student that was not involved with it. That's not one of y'all friends. It's called peer mediation. The chairs were optional. So a lot of times people they see me, I come walk into space and I choose the floor. And they be like, bro, you want some hippie shit? First, I'm not a hippie. The floor is an option to sit on.
The floor is an option, so I sat there.
And so it was just a lot of decolonization to be for real. We got to listen to music during class, all as one class.
Yeah.
Healing really felt dope. So what would happen was we would go into the class, our first class and our last class, kind of like homeroom in high school, where when you go into a Montessori class, when you go in there from like your, I guess would be your home class, and then your last class, no talking for 30, 40 minutes. And what I thought was ridiculous when I was a kid, now that I think about it, it's like, that's meditation. The teacher is there journaling for the day. So they have to journal. The teachers have to journal because, so I was like, the teacher basically can see a student that's come in today and they different from yesterday, or they different from their other days. And it's just because that first 30 minutes or the last 30 minutes, you really get to be with kids spiritually. You know what I mean? This kid can't stop moving. What's going on?
Yeah.
And now you could actually, during the day, pull them to the side like, bruh.
How you doing?
You good? So I gotta give it to Montessori. Diddy went there. Steven Spielberg is from the Natty. He went to Montessori. I look at that being the thing. So here I am going. I go to school 4 years, and I'm like, all right, Molefi Asante done put this in me that, this Afrocentricity. So I'm like, all right. And shout out to Matt from corporate. Because Matt and one of our guys, Phil, in the city, the sneaker stuff. I don't know if you remember Just for Kicks, the documentary came out. Like during that era, it was like the second era to the
sneaker rush.
The sneaker rush, and then there was the second one where we came in and kind of got digitized. So it was just everything to me, man. And I couldn't imagine having a job. And I couldn't imagine working for the white man. Those are two things I thought about. And
what was the thing about the job for you? What was the
travel?
Opposition?
I needed to travel. I needed to figure out how to get it and see the world. At 19, I'm like, bro, I gotta, because I was going to New York. So I would go to New York from 17. I have family in New York, so I was interning and then just going every summer to New York.
Which is dope. You were getting able to get outside of Cincinnati, get some exposure, meet some different people. Your worldview expand, especially being in New York.
And Montessori helped with that too, because at the end of every quarter or cycle, we would go on a trip. Whether it was like upstate, across town, or the islands or whatever, to do some community work. And so I couldn't get a job, or I couldn't figure out like I wanted to work. Actually, shouts out to Gentry Humphrey. I came up here just post college. I went out to Portland. It was crazy. I had got a connect because Brand Jordan has a really interesting relationship with Cincinnati.
Cincinnati,
because of University of Cincinnati basketball
Yes.
team. Shouts out to Bob Huggins. Shouts out to that whole that shook the earth of the world.
Crazy.
So I ended up getting to connect with them to just come out here and do like a little interview. And I was like, yeah, I can't get a job. And so what I did was I went to the radio station and I worked there for about 6 months, the radio station in the city as sales. And I was like, that's just me selling as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So I just gathered a couple of chips. I did an art show around sneakers called Sneaker Souffle or Nike Souffle. Some funny early 2000s corny. I erased it out of my memory. And some dude came in and was like, bro, if you really own that, Cincinnati ain't got no sneaker stores. What you trying to do? And at that time, I loved Flight Club.
Yeah, I mean, Flight Club had everything.
That was it. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do my own Flight Club here. And so I did it for like a year or two. I kept spending my money that I was making. I wasn't reinvesting nothing. And so after 2 years, I closed up shop. But by that time, I just knew so many people and had so many great interactions with
network.
it.
Yeah.
It was in the Ludlow garage in Cincinnati and Clifton, RIP to there. And that's how I started my journey. I met Michael B. Jordan and Kevin Hart literally during that. And they're both family friends.
Wow.
Randomly.
Yeah.
Like my best friend I grew up with, her and Michael were best friends. And then K. Hart, him and my brother had met, and he was my brother was like, bro, if you want the sneakers, holler at my brother. So all of a sudden one day, and this is Kevin Hart where people thinking he about to flop because of the slow.
Right.
Like this is not the Kevin Hart.
They didn't realize Kevin had a whole plan.
This is not that Kevin Hart. This 08 Kevin Hart where you're like, who?
Yeah.
And so my entertainment stuff actually started with Kevin Hart because. And it's crazy to say this because now it sounds like industry plant energy, but this is from Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And Kay was like, look, I have all of these shows. This is his chitlin circuit starting to blow up. So he's selling out every night.
Yeah, he's
selling out 3 shows on Sunday, 4 shows on Sunday. He like, my only thing is that I'm leaving a lot of money on the table for my after parties. And so I basically started booking Kevin Hart's after parties. And then I was just killing it so much that they introduced me to Snoop's people, and so I started doing
Snoop
with his DJ, and then that got me to Young Guru, where Guru was basically just engineering for Jay, for Hove, and then DJ Neil Armstrong. I don't know if you remember DJ Neil Armstrong.
I remember Armstrong.
So I was booking for him because he was with Jay at the time. I cold called him like, look, I be booking the after parties for people. This is how I started.
This is how you got it? Yeah.
Like 22, 23. I'm like, yo, I could book you anywhere around the world.
Yeah, what's up?
And then, yeah, man, I basically just hit up Young Guru. I heard Young Guru was going to be the next, like, DJ. So this happened, that happened. And I basically, like, Guru, he's like, look, bro. He was like, look, just show and prove. And so I went ham. But one crazy thing about Montessori that I must mention that turned me out is that we basically made passports. So think about arts and crafts.
Yeah.
Shouts out to the arts and crafts university that used to be here too, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, how do you teach a kid about travel and then about other countries? So they allowed us to do like passports where they had like the paper, whatever you made, like the exact size, and then every country, you could pick your own countries. But in order to like get a stamp, you had to know the currency, the religion, the climate, the language, and all of that. So
you had to really know about it.
Do you understand what that did to a kid?
It made you want to go visit. It made you want to learn. Made you want to explore. Has to, right?
Yeah, like that was it. I was 9 years old. My parents didn't even have a passport, so I had never even physically. Like our teacher came in with her passport, bruh. So she came in with I can remember it now. It had all these stamps and stuff and these stickers. And then she was like, y'all get to make one. I was like, what? And even at the end of the class, after you make it, the thing for the end of the class, visualization. Visualize you there.
You there, yeah.
And that's still one of my biggest practices right now.
Really?
Well, I use visualization like people use chewing gum.
How do you feel like it helps you?
You can see it, man. Like you can see this world. Isn't it crazy? Like if I ask you to close your eyes.
All right.
All right, right now I want you to visualize just outside of the door in this studio where you parked your car. Right? You can see it, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I'll be honest, man. What the fuck? Like, how are we not doing that more? Because then if I ask you to put like a red monster in there, your mind will put a red.
Whatever it is, yeah.
So there's a whole other world that we can be tapped into, and I just utilize that, and I feel like Montessori and maybe just whatever I was born with allows me to do it. So I do visualization a lot with people who may be new. My assistant Blessing, I'm asking her to do things that are just new, or I'm asking her to be things that she wants to be now. And a lot of times I had to ask her to see it, and then I just take that moment, and she sees it.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. That's pretty interesting. Especially thinking about visualization. A lot of people I don't know if we've actually talked about visualization on this podcast before.
Oh, we've got to talk about a lot of stuff. So, I love spirit world, right? And there's this world.
Yeah.
It's a white man's world. But I love spirit world. In spirit world, once people are harnessed on decolonization. Decolonization is just, the thought process of it is so actually gnarly that I think it could be intimidating to people.
Yeah.
People call it pedantic, where you decolonizing means you gotta look at every single thing you do.
Yeah.
I think visualization has helped me with that blow of man, I gotta actually change it all up. And so, but visualization is a great tool. And I can't believe that people haven't talked about some of the substances they use, like weed and shrooms. I just can't figure out why creatives haven't talked about that.
Do you think it's also a part of it is societal, feeling like they might be shamed?
It has to be, and also they're under corporate contracts.
Under contracts, and also the bag.
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know that's a creative that may utilize healthy, and I like the word healthy around the substances, because if you take too many shrooms, you're gonna get cooked. But I want to empower people to talk about them more, and just publicly, because I really feel like that actually helps with the stigma. And these cities are already legalizing the thing, so hopefully that there'll be steps to taken where you being a outcast now will make you a leader at some point, because I call it native technology.
That's a nice term.
I got different names.
You got terms for everything.
Yes, I do. Native technology is cold. Can you imagine the native world seeing flying cars? When you was in the native world, there wasn't even actual cars. They seen flying cars. They didn't have right? I think of them always as having minds that were going the other way and not to the future.
Yeah.
But that's how psilocybin and weed, they help you go and visualize other worlds.
Imagine things that you wouldn't always naturally do.
I think naturally, with the society and the natural, it actually makes it quite hard to visualize what could be or what was.
Just because of the way a lot of conversations are and the way people think and the way talk and the hustle and bustle, it probably limits your ability in the space to be able to do that.
Exactly. I even then use terms now, visualization terms, what do you see? So if I on the phone, I'm like, what are you hearing? Or what do you see? Basically, it's a response.
It's a response.
Tell me what you
see. Yeah. That's pretty dope. Take me back a little bit, or take me into a little bit on the music side and the time you had your time with Guru. I'm curious to know, obviously you have that love for that time and hip hop likely. What do you think about hip hop today and the current state of the culture?
So it was always great because I had one foot in hip hop. Young Guru only reported to Jay-Z. He didn't report to a lot of people, and so that was dope because I didn't have to work with the industry. I thought the industry to be, I feel like the music industry, and this is shade, but come see me. Come see me. The music industry reminds me of the police. The people who didn't, they go there.
Yep.
So the police who they was getting bullied, so now they put police. The people who wasn't fly enough to make music or do XYZ, they in the labels. You know what I mean? And it's corny, and they're corny, and we haven't been able to police ourselves. And so I was chatting with y'all. I was like, we're the most influential culture, and we have no idea what it's influencing. And that's no other culture exists. You're not about to see Nike exist that whole time and not know how they influence. And I just feel bad about it because there are correlations between Chief Keef and Chicago violence, and I'm not gonna lay it on him. I mean, that would be weird.
Yeah.
But what he was a system of and a part of actually was happening. Then he had a microphone to spread it, and now you see kids that don't live that lifestyle actually taking it to that next level and making it a global, massive thing. Yeah. And now it's a little bit like WWF or E. You know what I mean? Where it's like when you hear Gunna and them talk about, oh no, like I was playing. I was like, that wasn't real. But then in the same conversation to everybody that they talking to, it's real.
Yeah.
Like, I ain't capping. But you just told the judge you capped. Which one? And I know you got to tell the judge whatever, but Gunna also see you in Paris. You ain't got no cases on you. That means maybe you wasn't really, right? So hip-hop is my main. Hip-hop is a part of, I feel like it's a part of my everything, and I think because of that, I want to stand it up sometimes and be like, "Yo, what's good, bruh?"
Yeah, you're like, I appreciate it. I just also care about it, and I wanna see us.
You can't tell me that
better.
The perception of black women. What's the highest perception of black women come from? You got movies and television, and you got hip hop. You don't see black women being talked about other than those two things, right? The movies joint I don't think it has been more powerful in the degrading nature of black women like hip hop. Hip hop, I feel comfortable here. Hip hop is one of the only places where you have gay or homosexual or fluid people still just talking about women in their bars. Like, bro, you don't even date women.
Yeah.
That's how crazy it is.
That's pretty crazy.
I don't like it. And the response from women naturally is just to keep the same energy, which it's perfect. It's like healing 101. Like somebody hits you, hit them back.
Hit them back, yeah.
And right now, I think it's really hurting hip hop that it's so violent and it's so misogynist. I think more than ever, like something about right now.
It just feels like it's at like an all-time
like getting
bubbling point.
Yeah, because it's been hard, man. Like 2020, 2021, we lost a lot of black men.
It's a lot.
We lost a lot of black men. A lot of middle-aged black men led the death category of COVID. Nobody's talking about this, but we lost a lot of black men. And for COVID, we lost a lot of black people.
Yeah.
A lot of black men died. And for us to just continue the war that's going on in the streets for the I don't know reason, and put it on wax, and the argument would be, well, they going through this, bro. Sensationalized, bro. Or if you got a 30-round clip that's not legal in your city, you told on yourself. But it's okay to tell on yourself now, so it's just a little weird, man. I love Trouble, man. R.I.P. to Trouble from Atlanta. If y'all ever get to hear the album that he did with Mike Will and really get to dig into in the lyrics, man, it was really telling about, T.I. came out with this where it's like, I'm on this right now, but I ain't trying to be on this. I like that type of hood NIGG. Like, I like...
Because you feel like it's honest, but it's also like, but I'm also trying to go somewhere.
It's sustainable, it's real.
Yeah.
Every hood, every gangster that I know, dead or in jail. So what are we trying to keep it real for? One of those? So the whole snitch thing is damaging, man. My people really be in the city on that. I'm like, bro, as soon as you get, bruh, tell him.
Yeah.
He don't FaceTime too much. Like this little, it's just like little telltales that allow you to know that it's not real, but then there's just like this thing. So hip hop is frustrating to me, but wow, I mean, it gave me self. When Jay was London, England, south of France, anywhere between, I'm like, konnichiwa, ladies, when I'm out. I was basically studying every single thing Hov said.
Yeah.
Right? He was like the second dad. I studied everything Scarface said and everything that I heard out of the South. And one of my favorite rappers is Sugar Free out of Pomona.
Sugar
Get
free.
your money while you bullshit. And so I'm from where funk is from.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So a lot of people don't know that funk music is from Cincinnati. And Dayton, Ohio.
Yes, sir.
People would have a clue walking around here crazy. Like, then funk's cousin, I really feel like little cousin is hip hop. So the most music ever sampled in hip hop is funk.
It's funk, of course.
Biggie, I live by the funk.
Yep.
And wow. That's funk is not only just music, it's culture, it's the way you talk, it's the way you dress.
The style, yeah.
Everything. So
how you live.
How you live. So the way for funk to go to LA and California like it did was special. For it to go down to Brazil like it did, Brazilian funk cold. For, you know what I mean? Like for it to go to the Portuguese like that have more Africans than we got. I just felt like it was the one. So I love my city. I love how the music has gone around the world by just samples. And I know that hip hop, although going through a rough period now, that is resilient because of the music history and the connection that we have to vibration. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it's important to have these conversations, right? Like I think we should be able to have this dialogue about a culture that we're part of and that we care so much of, right? Because it's the only way to actually see a different future. If we never talk about it, the way we kind of talked about some of the other things earlier,
then we won't.
Nothing will happen, and we'll just go backwards, right?
Let's say something real quick, B. Interscope, Motown, Def Jam. This music influences. Let's stop fronting, bruh. The hoods are bad, so that actually may help us get to y'all dealing in the hood, because y'all ain't in the hood. Interscope ain't in the hood doing like what other brands are doing that work with. Not at all. They ain't building no music studios in the hood. Am I lying?
No, there are none.
They're not. Like, record labels, what is y'all doing? Y'all looking weird. It's kind of, it's weird.
It's weird.
It's weird. Like, y'all got to step into the hood. Everybody want to be musicians. With my time with Young Guru, I worked a lot in like music and tech. Because I saw that a lot of these brothers was already technical while we were, you remember like the 2010 and 12 when Google and them came out with the minorities. And I'm like, oh, black boys is downstairs in the basement making beats with their music technology.
Right.
Like, let's like meet them there. And that was really one of the first things, B, that I thought, man, we need research. Like, hip-hop needs research. So I started a research proposal called Sleeping Giants, which the thesis, I wish I had it on me. I would.
Yeah, you was like, I got it.
but you know, the research proposal was all about black men's connection to technology through music production. And in the digital era. Yeah.
Man, your music knowledge and connection is very deeply rooted. You know what I mean? But it also speaks to like what you said. You're connected to people, right? And so it's always centered in that. So it makes sense like those intersections would happen. Another very passionate interest of yours is architecture, but not minimizing it to just be architecture is a part of a bigger thing. But I'm curious to know where that comes from.
Man. I think it's that being curious. It's that those early rides with my dad.
You taking the back streets.
Yeah. And old people, they love to tell you what things was.
Oh, they love to tell you everything about it.
That was this, and it was nothing like being with a super OG. Like he held like a granddad's age, but I got to see him every day. Like I got to be with him every day. So I like it, him allowing me to be in the hood and be in the suburbs and not. I still to this point. I don't have I'm one-to-one in both of those places, and it's everywhere. Like you in the architecture, you just don't know it. Like we all are, in these buildings, in these spots, and they hold so much energy. And so I remember I was talking about everybody had a building because when you were driving long drive, oh, that's my building.
That's my building.
That's so funny. When I would be traveling, and shouts out to Amalu. Who I also work with on the music side. More like right before I started Hood Mid-Century Modern, I just remember and Guru, we would just basically land in the town, and you had that, how you had sound check.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we was always like, what can we get in between there? Sometimes a strip club, sometimes you had what
else can we get into?
What can we get into in the city? Like, how do we And again, shouts out to like Master P and some of those old school hip hop guys that were like Pimp C. Were like, yo, you gotta build relationships in these towns. Mm-hmm. You can't just go into town
just
to
pull
a
up.
concert.
Yeah.
And so a little like I got to travel. Mm-hmm. And so I would carry a camera and I would just get busy with them. And when I started the account B, I was like, yo, there's nothing on the internet speaking to us or like speaking like us. There's nothing on the internet even at the hood century right now. Like where it's some kid who just really loves doors and like, you know what I mean? And shouts out to all the people who are on Tumblr. So I wasn't on that, but one day when I was walking up the street, I had, in 2019, I had stopped managing. Mm-hmm. And I remember going into these rooms and I remember going with my clients and then people after the work, they'd be like, so what's up with you? And I'm like, but I didn't put it together.
Yeah.
I knew who I was, but I just didn't kind of register that people were like, yo, you're a mad interesting cat. Mm-hmm. But I remember just thinking, so I hate this whole like, and where I'm from, listen, this is like expletive loaded, so just like, y'all can bleep this out, whatever. I feel very liberated. But you know how when other people know about stuff, mm-hmm. So it's like, you ain't, like, we were all talking about gentrification every dinner. So 2018, 19, every city I go to, everybody
That's
talking.
the conversation about the neighborhoods are changing. Like, I got a Starbucks on the corner.
And it's type complaining. Like, I was like, man, I ain't no hoe. Like, I'm not no soft dude. I'm not about to be pushed around. Y'all not about to move moms out of that hood. Stop. And I remember just having that intensity about it, bro. I'm not about to get moved. Like, my people, like, we gotta. And so, October 19, December of 19, I'm walking up the street and I'm like, the biggest assets in these neighborhoods, the biggest financial assets, and obviously the things that holds the most memories are buildings. Let me get a grasp on this.
And value.
And value. So I walked up the street and I was like, man, I know on my mom's street there was 3 mid-century modern like homes. Mm-hmm. And they were like, I remember they were the different ones than all of the
other homes, yeah.
And so I walked the street and I'm just like, man, I'm about to take pictures of these. I'm gonna call them like the hood mid-century joints. And that's how, and then it ain't start all righteous like that. It just started like, bro, we got blind sides from this history of like not knowing. And it's these small things, and a lot of them are in how the world is built and designed.
Intentionally.
Right? Yeah, it's a lot of our blind sides are very dangerous for us to have right now.
What are some of those blind sides you believe?
Just like our disconnection from the cities that we live in for so long, for our families have lived in them. Where do you live? Most of us, if we kind of was like giving it this energy, most of us 20 years ago would not probably have asthma. Because a lot of us were positioned places that gave us asthma, nothing else. Now, that position that gave us asthma, being next to this, they call them like all these zones or whatever, but being in this zone, then here come this influenza. Now our lungs not built up all because of our locale.
All because of where we're located. Yeah. All because of that environment.
Nobody ain't talking about this. Just because we were relocated. And so my big theory is that we don't know where we at. So my whole thing, if people go, I just hope people don't come with the gloves with me, but I was like, yo, black people don't know where they at. So you ever have somebody be like, yo, meet me at the northwest corner. Oh, wait, nigga, the northwest corner? Which part? Or even like the whole architecture thing of like, do you see that? Or like they're seeing things that like maybe we just hadn't seen. And we have a really volatile relationship with these neighborhoods. But I did figure out like, man, we got to figure out where we are.
Yeah. First.
We could figure out where we are, because then that may help, like, yo, we actually need to be here. Because, like, some of the stuff we fighting for are killing us. So, like, some of the projects that we fighting for to keep up or keep it right, like, it's from there. So, shouts out to Winton Terrace and the whole Zone 15 and some of these places. Zone 15 is where Nikki Giovanni and where Isley Brothers came from. Bro, when I tell you that for 75 years, there's been a police gun range in the neighborhood, and if it gets this silent on one of those days, all you hear is pop, 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 pop.
Bro, that's terrible. That's horrifying.
That's the environmental racism that I'm talking about. The zone in combat they call it this neighborhood Procter and Gamble's soap that was called the Irish soap bar. You know that Irish soap, bro. That factory polluted generations of black and brown people, bruh.
Yep.
And to me, it was just a project that we grew up near.
Yep.
We would go down there play football.
Whatever.
Our babysitter lived down there, bro. Everybody from there in the next 20 years, you're gonna read about cancers, leukemias, asthmas, bro, and it's all because of our locale. So once I started Hood, I started to figure that out. Like,
you were like, this is more so to you, more so about like preservation and open up the aperture of like, let's be intentional and understand where we're at. Speaking towards that though, you know, you have an interesting strategy with kind of how you share. But before we get into that, I think the question to me that comes to mind is, why do you feel some of these things need to be preserved?
So that's the other thing of us like starting over, like and over and over.
Like every other generation?
Every generation. Right now, I'm gonna say probably about 50% of the people that's in this studio, y'all phone. Y'all ain't got no more room for y'all pictures.
Nah, bro, it's on the cloud.
Yeah. So that was one of my big things is like I feel like there was a digital divide that happened. So now we kind of really not keeping our stuff. There's been a lot of displacement happen, and then obviously in these cities we're often at the lowest ends of the cities where we're flood prone, and I fear this like not being able to really identify ourselves because we don't really have stuff that identify. So that
identifies us.
That was really one. So one of the things I was doing was I was taking these pictures and I was kind of vibing with it, and somebody hit me up and bro like, yo, bro, this is a form of preservation, and I didn't really consider it. I was like, and my mom is a collector and my dad from the old school, so just anything that we keep from him was gonna be irrelevant. And then when you talk about these hoods and the gentrification conversation, probably like the second or third thing is like how that basketball court that you have is no longer. It was like a nostalgic moment that I saw missing, and I was like, yo, we need to really like think about preservation. And like right now, bruh, all of this, we said it at dinner, all of the great things that everybody's doing, it don't matter if y'all don't save it.
Yeah, because it's just...
It's moving way
It'll be
faster
lost.
now.
Right, it'll be lost. History will forget it, right? You think about even the way we share now is through devices and apps that are designed for us to move on.
To keep it moving.
In like a couple seconds.
What you got tomorrow.
Yeah. Not even tomorrow, same day.
What you got later.
Yeah.
So I really feel like our identity is wrapped around our archive. And so my dad's archive with his brother, I didn't ever get to meet his brother. Henry, he ended up going to Pratt from the Vietnam War, went to Pratt from Cincinnati, moved to New York in the 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
Like that was unheard of for black folk and his life, and got cut short in New York. And so all I really have of his memories are these beautiful pictures that he took of interiors. And right, so it draws these massive connections spiritually that you wouldn't even know if you don't have that picture.
Right.
And bro, I'm telling you, it's an epidemic of it. What's happening is that black and brown folks don't have our pictures. We don't even have videos mostly because most of the times 40s and 50s, there was no video. Black people didn't have video cameras. Whenever video cameras came out, I think it was like mid 50s, 60s. Whenever like this moving image came out, black people weren't the home versions of those. We didn't have a lot. So you're not even gonna see any of that unless it was news outlets, right? Then what's happening in Atlanta, San Francisco, Cincinnati, Cleveland, it happened in Paris already, is black folks that were integrated into cities are now being moved out. But guess who has their archives?
Who?
The city. That's another topic that people going to have to talk about because it's like, they got our shit. The National History Museum, and I mean, Blessed in D.C., I think is probably one of the best. It's owned by the Smithsonian. And so oftentimes I really feel like white people have all our shit.
We don't even own ours.
That's weird.
It's not weird. It's wrong.
And it's not even right. And it's not even conspiracy laden or something that we can't walk out of this meeting right now or this interview right now and start to work at. We can.
We can.
I really feel like we have to know. The archive too reminds me of like research. I think research reminds people of like school. But the archive is where the creativity happens. A lot of brands like Nike. Shouts out to Virgil, who I just adore. And like you could see Virgil worked with archive as his
totally.
guide.
Totally.
You know what I'm saying?
He was a student.
He was a student of what he may not have been able to experience. Like we often need to go back. And so I love blackarchive.co on Instagram and work with them a little bit. I just really love the creative approach to archive.
When you think about what you want to share, maybe how you go about what you're going to share, like what's the process in that? What's the approach? Like, is it thematic? Is it just like you were driving or visiting somewhere in town and you were like, oh, that's dope. So I want to share that.
So that's the first. I'm a filler, and so, and a lot of us are past like a layer or two of whatever, and so I really, when I started Hood Century, I was trying to read architecture. I was trying to understand if this is all by intent. You remember like this old saying, everything's by design?
Yeah.
I used to think that was like BS. I used to think that was like some, like, my uncle who has the theories, like, oh, okay, yeah. But then finding out that it was, like, everything was like intensely. Yeah.
Someone thought about
Somebody thought about it. That's when I started to be like, all right, cool. Let me think about these modern styles when I started. So, like, let me see if I'm introducing them to just mid-century modern residential homes. Let me see if I can get them with the Art Deco, because I know that the Art Deco is actually the post offices that you go to every day, or like the Streamline Modern is actually just a Greyhound station. So that's what I've been up to. Like Memphis Design Group, the Martin Lawrence logo.
Yes. You posted that series. That was crazy.
You feel me?
Yeah, that was insane.
Bro, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
And then once you see it, bro, not
Can't
only
unsee
you
it.
not gonna unsee it, but then you see more.
You see more of it. You see the influence of it.
So now you be like, this whole part of this generation is Afro, what I would call it, an Afro, Memphis Afro revival, that I made up the name. But that Martin and Do the Right Thing, black people loved that design in the 90s.
Loved it.
And then now you see it's coming back. And so I just think feeling is how I do it. And then also I'm thinking about the lives that we lived and what the things we like. And then I just look at the design of it and I'd be like, oh, that's actually Art Deco. So then I really came up with this theory that like Art Deco and Streamline Modern, we actually lean a lot towards. And then come to find out, we basically traveled in buses and on trains.
Yep.
And so that's probably
because that's
makes
what we
up a lot
saw,
of our
what we
aesthetic.
were immersed in.
So I love like that type of a world. I don't like when people think I'm an architect guy, because what I'm doing.
What you mean?
Because it's like this. I started this thing called Things We've Made, and it basically is a language. I'm calling it agency because it gives agency. But the reason I thought about it is because it's like a bunch of things going on. Let's say mental health. Ain't nobody to this day using the language that we know to use with mental health with us. The mental health language is obviously 90s.
Yeah.
White folks.
Yeah.
The Buddha with the thing, mad ugly design. If you look on YouTube right now, you look Healing Frequencies. They have one aesthetic. They don't have two. They have one aesthetic. All of these videos, but I'm like, why? And so Things We've Made is taking a 10-year approach at big issues that are facing black and brown people. The first one was housing. And that's Hood Century. Now you see how when I started, it wasn't that wasn't the goal.
Yeah, but it was the energy, but things evolve, right? They grow.
So now I'm like, all right, we look at that. I was able to get some land in Ohio, so we looking at food. We still not languaging food right. So I'm thinking that an agency that looks at the language via research. So it's like they're, bruh, who tells you about eating good in the hood? And they be like, oh, my mom, All right, cool. What you be telling me? Oh, for real? Like, nobody's doing that in no city. Learning how to talk about these things. If you say eat healthy to somebody, that sounds dry already.
It also doesn't communicate what that means. Like, and it also doesn't meet me where I'm at.
It doesn't meet, and nobody's not. One of the things about these institutions, and I don't know what the hell happened. This goes for black intellects as well as like everybody and white folks. Is like, what language are we? Why are we doing this? I talked a lot last night with y'all about like, what's your intent? We think that everybody's intention is similar because of our skin. Like, what's the intent of this project? The intent of Hood Century is to make it so that we can understand it palatable, and then maybe we can experience that. And so, I'm about to start an archival project next that looks to be one of the first studios and agencies for our archives. So the Funk Museum right now, on the ground, is not open. So they might need some strategy.
Absolutely.
Right? Maybe they should be touring. Maybe they need to do this, but there's no agency for that. So that's the next project that like Hood Century under there. And I'm giving myself 10 years. And hopefully we can move some things by then. So it's kind of like an old school, it's a slow agency.
I love it though, because in again, like we talked about in the conversation today, is faster, 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 faster. Where do you find the confidence? Maybe not even the confidence is the right word. Why are you so calm with a 10-year project? Why are you okay with it?
I do see a lot of the civic projects take time. A lot of the research projects take time, right? And what I would do as a manager and as a pseudo manager entrepreneur is I would do too much. You see how my interests are wide, and so I feel like to really penetrate into language is so cold. You could tell somebody off from where I'm from by like the smallest detail. And so as I'm building something that's a language-based tool, we gotta be real clear on like, nah, that's giving this, that, and that. So the 10-year, I think, is just, it gives it enough time to like put this. So now Hood Century exists in the world now.
Right.
So somebody is right at home right now, like, yo, I want to make this better.
Yeah.
I want to make this more of this, or I'm gonna do something like that, and that's what it exists for.
Yeah.
So you got to give it a little time to brew and understand it. So I think the 10 years is really great, and I would love to do it. I would love to do it in a more. I mean, it's urgent.
Yes.
But it's also so new. Like thinking about Hood Century as agency, as well. We're gonna be growing into an active firm on one side and an active media company on one side. The actual firm that gives agency to the city plan and the architect stuff. Yeah, it takes time.
It takes time. Yeah.
It takes time.
I think it's great to have that honesty and also have an approach where you're like, yeah, I'm not trying to rush this. I'm not trying to create some false timeline that's not going to be achievable. Like 10 years is what I said. If it happens before, great.
Right. And if it happens after, good too.
Good too.
There's bumps.
There's going to be bumps and developments along the way.
There's going to be bumps, man. Like one of the big things about where Hood Century is right now is I never wanted this to be just an Instagram account. I want to get out and be actionable.
Yeah.
And
tangible things.
Yeah, so like 2020 and 21 for real.
Yeah.
They really bodied that. And this is the beginning of the third year, and it feels like year one because I get to be out.
You get to be outside. No, it really does. Like you think about that, those years were blurs. Just like everything was digital. Most of us were in rooms creating, right? We weren't even be able to engage with one another, so we didn't even know what the world was.
Mad young,
so it feels different now.
Yeah, exactly.
When I think about you, spoke about the digital world, right? Specifically with Hood Century, but you're also, putting things in the physical world. Like talk to me about like the flashcards, right? Like that's a tangible medium, right? And so. What was that about? Right, that was getting outside of this digital realm. What was that about to you?
So, I mean, it was a Montessori play, right? Like, everybody learns different.
Yeah.
coffee table energy. I love where.
Yeah.
First of all, I love where y'all coffee tables is at now. It seems like people are like really utilizing that as an entertainment point for people, and so I wanted to do that something that was dumb accessible.
Yeah.
If you ever, and I meant to bring the cards, and I meant to bring some teas for y'all, but
you had to ship them.
I got
you. Or I'll have to come visit.
yeah, either one, come visit. Where the cards on one side, you got like a kid-like drawing of a style. We chose 16 modern styles.
Wow.
But there's many more, but we just chose 16 that we would see in the hood. And then on the back, all of the definitions are like, I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
And people just love them. I sold so many of them, man. Me and consumerism kind of like, we've been beefing a little bit.
Yeah, it's a tension point, sounds like.
Yeah, so I want to do more, and luckily with a couple of partnerships and publishing as well. Like, shout out to Scholastics too. A couple of partnerships. I'm gonna be able to like. I don't have a Scholastics deal yet, so if anybody's working with Scholastics, I want to be able to do more ways that we can engage with like flashcards.
Yeah.
So we are dropping furniture. I wanted to talk about this a minute. We're dropping furniture flashcards this summer, and that way you can kind of like, that chair grandma had for a minute, that was actually this.
Yeah, I recognize. I can identify. Now have language to put towards. It's not just a chair.
Exactly. Know your hood.
Yeah.
You dropping some know your hood cards so that we can get familiar with other hoods that's in other in cities. Because we talked about this, but I was asking myself why I had never been to South Los Angeles. Like, I've been to Los Angeles once a time. I was asking myself, like, I was thinking, like, I became a part of the loop. I was like, oh, no. Like, why hadn't I ever been to, like, down in Leimert area? And then my homegirl was like, because you couldn't go. And I remember, like, all of these scary stories.
Yeah, you're like, why couldn't I go? Because of some stories that I heard.
So these cards, I really feel like, could be some of the first, like, very, it's like, you look at the Atlanta card, and you could actually look at the neighborhood. Like, this is Corler Heights.
This is what this neighborhood is.
Because we be talking too broad.
Yeah.
Like, where you from? And
it almost means meaningless. It almost is meaningless. You know what I mean? Because someone will say it, but the conversation doesn't go beyond that, right?
It doesn't go nowhere.
So you don't know what it is. You have nothing to really, like, bring it to life.
I really like rivers. So river creeks and neighborhoods now. So that's why I be like, what neighborhood you from? Like, where you from? Where you at? Like, what river by you? Like, that's a source. You know what I mean? Like, talk to me of something. And people's identity usually are connected to those neighborhoods and the cities. So what side you from? You go to ask somebody from Detroit. You can't just ask where you are you from Detroit? You gotta ask what side. Cause then that's gonna let you know who you dealing with, bruh. Yeah. It's real rap.
Real, for sure. You learn a lot more.
And so I'm really into
especially when you know the city.
Yeah, exactly.
Where do you see Hood Century going? Right? Like, man, what's success look like?
Hood Century for the kids, man. We having fun with it. Yeah. But Hood Century for the kids. And so I want to be able to I want us to be the people walking with our white friends. Like, yeah, look at that art deck, man. That was built in 1981. And tell the architect, like, I want us to know more about where we at. Yeah. And so I see Hood Century being a media company that spreads out a little bit and becomes like a resource. There's a lot of resources around living that I think Black people need, that there's no site to go to right now to kind of find more out about where you at. And so Hood Century, we're going to be launching a website soon that uses a Google Map API. Oh, facts. So you just look like you on Google Map. And we just add new culture to it. We have television or radio, and then you can just be like, yo, this is your Portland. This is so. It's not a greatly new concept. I just feel like Google Map is our #1 directional tool right now. And I just wanted to throw some culture on it.
Oh, you don't use Apple Maps?
Man, I can't even speak on Apple. Apple Maps. It's so funny because I talked to Apple Maps.
Oh, word.
It was one of the first people to call me. And guess what I said?
He was like, I don't like your maps.
They was like, well, maybe you could change that. Nah, with this budget. respectfully,
yeah.
because they do, like, Apple Maps is doing more with culture. So that's it. I want Hood Century to be a real historic preservation society, and so a lot of our next movement is going to be about us just like, uncovering some of the hood legends that are from great parts of Shreveport, great parts of Oakland, and connecting the African American diaspora. You know what I mean?
That.
To that point, yeah.
One thing I thought that was super interesting that you said, and I want to connect it to a quote from a Vogue interview of yours, but you were saying Hood Century's for the kids, right? And in this Vogue interview, you talked about there's a pipeline issue in design and architecture, right? What's the feeling that pipeline could look like, and how long do you think that would take?
Luckily, it's upon us. Luckily, it's upon us. You see all of the music videos now, and all of the, I don't know, like, I see black people, like, looking and engaging more with design right now. A lot of it is entrepreneurship, digital entrepreneurship. Like you YouTube page, you gotta kind of want your stuff to look good.
Yeah.
TikTok, you kind of want to have your stuff set up right. So, I really like where it's going. Sean Brown, designer out of Toronto, just a lot of people that are like designing furniture.
A lot of people
and
are doing really dope shit. Shannon Maldonado out of Philly. Like there's a lot of pockets of things that, like, you're right. There's a lot popping up.
There's something happening. So I'm excited to see what comes of that. There's also a land buying trend where people are getting like that.
You bought land.
I bought land. And there's also a thing where I feel like generationally, the late 20s and the 30s are dealing with their parents. And like whether their parents are transitioning or their parents or need some help or people moving back home or I feel like there's something about the childhood home or about where we find our peace that happened during 2020 that I feel like a lot of people was like, I actually need to make sure that I'm building up my home and building up my thing. And so, because there's a big responsibility of us that I don't think we knew we had of the legacy of our family from a like, you gonna keep the house. If you sell it, and that's cool too if you sell the house, but just make sure that y'all have something
that still keeps that memory and the energy alive of what took place, the significance of it to your family and your legacy, right? It's tough. Like we talked a little bit about this. It's like, sometimes it's hard for us to hold on to things because we feel like we've never had much. And so if there's a monetary gain, I'm trying to get the monetary gain versus necessarily keeping the sentimental value.
Long term.
But it's also not even just sentimental. Like, to keep something like that value grows more over time than taking that money out of the ground.
You see with the brand Champion, you see the brand Carhartt Whip. Carhartt Whip now worth more than Carhartt. You see Carl Kanai, you see Pelly coming back, you see Averex coming back. If we can withstand some things, which has been hard because of the generational wealth, then the thing is gonna come back to us, like twice or 3 times in one lifetime? Something that we thought was cool when we was young gonna come back to us 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Just kind of being cool with that, knowing that.
Yeah.
Right? And having maybe some partnerships set up to withstand that 7 or 10 years where it's not popping.
It's not as hard,
Tony Shelman, who started Mecca, and then Nietzsche is a family friend, and we talk about it all the time. It's like, bro, I needed a big cash out. But here comes Mecca. Like, here comes the eligibility for Nietzsche and Mecca to be kind of
back in.
And so I'm really interested in black folks and our intellectual property. The preservation bit is actually that big intellectual property bit. The MoMA is a cool museum, but they make their money with people who are dying, artists who are dying, and their estates ain't right. When I say ain't right, they're not able to support the artist past postmortem.
Right.
And so they go to places like the MoMA. Before you know it, they're going to have all our stuff and they're going to be operating. So I hope that with the knowledge of self, with the knowledge of space, we actually be like, that's going to be actual valuable in next. But one other big thing that I'm noticing and that I want to move towards more with Hood Century is infrastructure.
Tell me more.
I don't know if you've been hearing a lot of like the Russian attack on Ukraine's infrastructure.
Not into the weeds.
So they use it as a tech like a war a strategy. Is to like, yo, we're not gonna kill no more people. We're gonna make it so those people can't live.
Wow.
And if you look at the way the United States built infrastructure in the mid-20s, early 30s to the 40s, right? Our first ever like massive infrastructure bill was called the New Deal, right? And it built all of the highways.
Yep.
It built all of that, and it was obviously built in design. And a lot of us are still living in a lot of that housing.
Yeah.
Which is just a crime.
Yeah.
And so now you got this new infrastructure bill that passed in early Feb of 2021, 2022. It's called the Build Back Better bill. The most money we've ever spent on anything.
On anything.
And it's a new infrastructure deal, and we don't know about it. So the first 100 years of our world was built by mostly white people, a lot of Europeans that were in the modernism era. Now it's another 100 years that's up for building, and since we don't know about it, they about to build it again.
Yeah.
Right now, it's like trillions of dollars out if we become aware that we can actually build and be building in our neighborhood and be working. So I really feel like there's going to be a trend after this housing and furniture thing to like continue to build the neighborhood. So taking that Nipsey approach, I think Issa Rae has an amazing opportunity to take her infrastructural bill in her coffee shops, and then those spots that people are living in up top.
Yep.
All right, let's community land trust that, right? Like, let's do some really gnarly things that could then be case studies to doing more. So I think our next thing, if we want to survive, because we about to be making cities in the suburbs.
Yeah. It's gonna happen.
It's happening. So like, how can we get into like infrastructurally
into
minded?
that. Man, that's beautiful though. Like
Isn't that
that's
cool?
it's like a huge unlock, right?
Yeah.
Like a different thing for us to think about because we don't typically have access to that type of information. But there are things that are coming in, like folks share information like you. Earn Your Leisure cast are sharing information, right? Lene is sharing information. Like we're starting to have these things in these moments happening. My last question of the interview is one I love to ask everyone. And our mission is truly to cultivate community and inspire the generation, whether it is ours, our peers, and coming up, to claim a seat. And so I wanted to ask you, for those coming up, those creatives that look at you, look what you've done with Hood Century Modern and the other things that you've done as well, what advice would you have for them on this journey as they're trying to figure it out, trying to find their purpose, trying to find their thing? What advice would you offer them?
Yo, F the game, do your own thing. Like tap into your gut. You know what I mean? Like silence everything and tap into your gut. That gotta be that gut. That gotta be like. And when I say F the game, like really, like they just made it up. Like things were just made up. Like all these architecture terms, somebody just made it up. Literally, like F the game, do your own thing. Like listen to your gut. Like,
Respect.
Yeah.
Man, yo, this has been wonderful.
Thanks for having me, man.